Before getting into Zappos, I wanted to talk a little bit about what led me to Zappos, and the story actually begins with pizza. In college, I was running a pizza business with a roommate of mine on the ground floor of our dorm. The dorm had maybe 300 or 400 people in it, and we were responsible for, we bought the ovens ourselves, invested in the ovens, we would order from suppliers, we would set the menu, hire the workers, and occasionally we were making the pizzas ourselves. And this guy named Alfred, who's actually our CFO and COO today at Zappos, would stop by every night and buy a large pepperoni pizza from us. And to me, that wasn't that weird because actually we knew in college that Alfred could eat a lot. We actually had nicknames for him like Monster or Human Trash Compactor. And literally, like when we late at night, there'd be 10 of us going to a Chinese restaurant at 3 a.m. and he would finish everyone's leftovers, whatever it was that was left on their plate. So it wasn't that weird that he would stop by every night and buy a large pepperoni pizza from me. But then sometimes a few hours later, he would stop by and buy another large pepperoni pizza from me. And I was thinking, okay, this boy can eat. And well, I found out a few years later, he was taking the pizzas upstairs and then selling them off by the slice. So that's why he's our CFO and COO today at Zappos. So after the pizza business, Sanjay was my roommate's name. Well, I guess it still is his name. But we started a company called Link Exchange together, and it did online advertising. And we grew that to about 100 or so people, and then ended up selling the company to Microsoft in 1998. But what a lot of people don't know is actually why we ended up selling the company. And the reason we did was because the company culture just went completely downhill. We didn't know any better, we just didn't pay attention to it. Like I remember when it was just 5 or 10 of us, it was kind of like your typical .com back in the day. We were working around the clock, sleeping under our desks, had no idea what day of the week it was, showering occasionally, and then, but having a ton of fun doing it. And then we hired all the people with the right experiences and skill sets, but some of them weren't culture fits, and by the time we got to 100 or so people, like I myself dreaded waking up in the morning and having to force myself to go to the office. And I started hitting the snooze button more and more often. And that was kind of a weird feeling for me because this was a company that I had co-founded. And if I myself didn't want to go into the office, then I was thinking, how must all the other employees feel? So we ended up selling the company, got lucky with the timing, and then Alfred and I got together after that and formed an investment fund, and we invested in about 20 or so different internet companies, and Zappos just happened to be one of them. But over the period of about a year or so, I kind of realized that just being on the investing side was pretty just boring. I really miss actually being part of building something. So basically within a year, I decided to join Zappos full-time, and I've been with Zappos ever since. And then, as was mentioned, Amazon actually just announced the acquisition of Zappos. And actually, if you go to I'll make this presentation available so you don't need to write down everything, but if you go to the URL there, there's actually this long letter that details everything, but they're allowing us to continue to run the company independently, so we're all pretty excited about being able to continue to grow the Zappos brand and our culture. So quick stats, we have about 1,300 employees. About half our employees are in Las Vegas, where our headquarters are, and the other half are in Kentucky, right next to the UPS hub, and that's where our warehouse is. And most people know us as an online retailer of shoes. We've been around for a little over 10 years now, because that's how we started. But actually today we sell a lot more than shoes. We sell clothing, housewares, kitchenware, beauty and makeup products as well. And really, internally, we think of Zappos pretty differently. We're hoping 10 years from now people won't even realize that we started out selling shoes online. We really just want the Zappos brand to be associated with the very best customer service and the very best customer experience. And actually, it doesn't even have to be limited to e-commerce. We've actually had customers email us and ask us, can we please start an airline or run the IRS? And we're not going to do either of those things this year, but 20 or 30 years from now, I wouldn't rule out a Zappos Airlines that's just about the very best customer service. And so one brand actually that we look to a lot for inspiration is Virgin, Richard Branson's company. And the difference is that the Virgin brand is more about being hip and cool, whereas we just want the Zappos brand to be about the very best customer service. We've gotten a lot of recognition by the media, especially over the past 6 to 12 months. But the one that we're most proud of is actually in January of this year, we made the Fortune 100 best companies to work for. And that was a goal that we set out very early on because we wanted to do Zappos right this time and make sure that culture was our #1 priority and that we don't make the same mistake that I made at my previous company. And so we were all pretty excited and happy that we made the 100 best companies to work for list. So some other stats, we have a little over 11 million customers, purchasing customers, and more than 99% of our business is in the US, and it's because of our location next to the UPS hub that we can do a lot of special things for our US customers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And on any given day, about 75% of our orders are from repeat customers. Our whole philosophy is, let's take most of the money that we would have spent on paid marketing, and instead of spending it on paid marketing or paid advertising, invest it into the customer experience and invest it into customer service instead, and then let our customers do the marketing for us through word of mouth. So we've basically grown from no sales in 1999 to over $1 billion in gross merchandise sales in 2008. And the #1 driver of that growth has been through repeat customers and word of mouth. And so every opportunity we get, we keep trying to raise the bar in terms of the customer service and the customer experience that customers experience. So what is customer service? Well, it starts with our policy. So in the United States, it's free shipping both ways, which means that a lot of customers will order 10 different pairs of shoes, for example, and try them on with 10 different outfits in the comfort of their living room, and then send back the ones that don't fit or they just don't like. And we encourage that type of behavior. If someone doesn't know if there's a size 9 or 9.5, then we tell them order both and then just ship back the one that doesn't fit. And so for us, we really think of that shipping back and forth as part of our service. Like returns are not a bad thing for our business model. And in fact, we've actually studied the customer behavior, and we found that customers that return stuff more often, once they get used to the shipping back and forth, it's kind of like Netflix, that's just part of the service, they actually end up spending more dollars per year compared to the customers that never return anything from us because they get used to the convenience and they don't view it as so risky to try stuff out that they maybe otherwise wouldn't. The other thing we have is a 365-day return policy for people that, I guess, have trouble committing or making up their minds. And most websites, it's pretty hard to find contact information. It's usually buried 5 links deep, and it's an email address that you can only email once, and so on. We take the exact opposite approach. We put our 1-800 number at the top of every single page of our website because we actually want to talk to our customers. And yeah, for us, we really view customer service as an investment, not an expense. And it's funny because a lot of times I'll speak at marketing conferences or branding conferences, and there's a lot of discussion about consumers being bombarded with literally thousands and thousands of messages every day. How do you get your brand to stand out? How do you get your message to stand out? And kind of as, there's a lot of attention given today to like social media or product placement or whatever. And for us, as kind of low-tech and unsexy as it may sound, we believe that the telephone is actually one of the best branding devices out there. And you have the customer's undivided attention for 5 to 10 minutes, and if you get the interaction right, what we found is that the customer remembers that for a very long time, and what we found is they also tell their friends and family about that interaction. And so, for a lot of times we get questions about, oh, what's a great way to get onto Twitter or Facebook or other types of social media in order to connect with customers? And our belief is the best social media from a business perspective is still the telephone. And yet that's a place where a lot of businesses, try to cut their expenses there. And then there's what happens after we get the credit card from the customer. And that's actually where we put most of our focus. It's after we already have the money from them. And we do all sorts of things. Our whole goal is we want to create some sort of emotion within the customer and create a personal emotional connection with the customer. And we do a number of different things. For our repeat customers, for example, in the US, we'll do a surprise upgrade to overnight shipping, even though they're expecting it a week later. And because we run our warehouse 24/7, and running a warehouse 24/7, by the way, is not the most efficient way to run a warehouse. The most efficient way to run a warehouse is to let the orders pile up, and then when the picker in the warehouse has to go pick the orders, doesn't have to walk as far. So that would be the right approach for maximizing efficiency. But we're not trying to maximize efficiency. We're trying to maximize the customer experience. So because we run our warehouse 24/7 and we're close to the UPS hub, a lot of orders, customers order as late as midnight Eastern time, and then the order shows up on their doorstep 8 hours later with that surprise upgrade, and that creates that emotional response within the customer. Creates, internally we call it wow. We want every customer to say wow whenever they interact with us. We run our call center pretty differently from most call centers. Most call centers have this concept called average handle time, which basically is all about how efficiently can you talk to the customer, which translates into how quickly can we get the customer off the phone. We don't have call times. In fact, I just found out our record phone call was about a month ago. It was 5 hours and 57 minutes long. And customers will call. Most of calls actually do not result in an order. Customers call for all sorts of reasons. They call because maybe it's their first time going through the returns process, or maybe they're going to a wedding this weekend and they just want someone to shop along with them. I think some of them call just because they're lonely or something, but we'll help them out as well as best we can. But yeah, we don't have scripts, we don't have call times, we don't try to upsell. All we care about is whether we go above and beyond for the customer, and really each phone call is a brand building opportunity, and that's really how we view it. What's the best way for us to build our brand so that by the end of this call, our brand is going to be that much stronger in terms of standing for the best customer service and best customer experience. So as an example, every rep is trained so that if a customer is looking for a specific pair of shoes, and let's say we're out of stock of a certain size, to look on at least 3 competitor websites. And if they find the shoe in stock on that competitor websites, to direct the customer to that competitor. And obviously we lose that sale, that transaction, but we're not trying to maximize every single transaction. Our goal is to build a lifelong relationship with our customer. And we get literally 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 phone calls and emails every single day. And basically we're building our brand one phone call at a time, one email at a time. Some other things, I talked about running our warehouse 24/7, and so there's all these things that we do on the customer service side, but our number one priority at Zappos is actually not customer service. Our number one priority is company culture. And our whole belief is that if you get the culture right, then most of the other stuff, like building a long-term enduring brand or delivering great customer service, will just happen naturally on its own. We really believe that, especially in today's world where information can travel so fast, and someone could post something on a blog or on Twitter or so on and instantly reach hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, that a company's culture and a company's brand are really just two sides of the same coin. Our belief is that a brand is really just a lagging indicator of the company's culture. Because building a brand today is very different from what it was 50 years ago. 50 years ago, a few people get in a room and decide, okay, this is what our brand is, buy a lot of TV advertising, and you're done, that you've built a brand. Whereas today, really, your brand is not 100% in your control. It's in the control of the minds of your customers. And I'll give an example. Think of the airline industry in general, not any specific airline, but if you think about the industry in general and I ask you, what do you think of when you think of the airline industry? Most people will say things like bad customer service, apathetic employees, and so on. That is the brand of the industry. And no airline set out to make that their brand, and yet that is the brand of the industry. So we really just focus on the culture and making sure that we get the culture right. So some of the things we do culture-wise are, it starts with the hiring process. Everyone that we hire, doesn't matter what position, we do 2 sets of interviews. The first set is kind of your standard set. The hiring manager and his or her team will interview for fit within the team, technical ability, relevant experience, and so on. But then we do a second set of interviews, and that's being done independently by our HR department. And the second set of interviews is purely for culture fit. And they have to pass both in order to be hired. So we've actually passed on a lot of really smart, intelligent people that we know can make an immediate impact on the top or bottom line, at least in the short term. But if they're bad for our culture, they're not a culture fit, then we won't hire them. And it's not even a question. There's no debate because we separated the HR interviewing process from the manager process. Whereas I think at most large companies, if someone's not a culture fit, but they have great experience and technical ability, then they'll probably end up getting hired. And that one hire isn't going to bring the company culture downhill, but you keep making compromises like that over and over and over again. I think that's why most large companies don't have great cultures. And we do the reverse as well. We will fire someone, even if they're doing their specific job function perfectly fine. If they're doing something that's bad for the culture, if they're bad for the culture in general, then we'll fire them for solely that reason. And performance reviews are 50% based on culture contribution as well. We believe that if we're serious about building our brand around being about the very best customer service, then customer service shouldn't just be a department. It should be the entire company. Thanks. And so some people might say vision or purpose beyond just money or profits or being number one in a market. And we went through the same thing, actually. When we first started out at Zappos, there was nothing about customer service and what we wanted our brand to be. This was back in 1999. There were a lot of other internet companies, and our whole idea was, okay, let's just sell some shoes online. And it wasn't until 4 years later when we all kind of sat around and asked ourselves, what do we want to be when we grow up? Do we want to be about shoes, or do we want to be about something more meaningful? And that's when we decided, okay, let's build the Zappos brand around being about the very best customer service. And when we did that, it had all these unanticipated consequences. We found suddenly employees were a lot more engaged. And when the employees were engaged, then when customers called, they could sense that the employee actually cared about them on the other end of the phone. It wasn't just there for a paycheck. And then when vendors came and visited the office, they could sense that employees really felt that there was purpose behind what they were doing. And all of this just had this snowball effect that I think played a huge role in getting us to where we are today. So sometimes when I speak at entrepreneur conferences, I get asked, what's a good market to go into? Where can I make a lot of money? And my response is always, you're kind of thinking of it backwards. Chase the vision and not the money. And kind of the ironic thing is the money will actually follow if you truly are passionate about your vision, and the vision is not being about being number one in a market or profits or more sales. So I like to say chase the vision, not the money. There was a movie called Notorious in which rapper Puff Daddy says to Notorious B.I.G. in the movie, don't chase the paper, chase the dream. I just want an excuse to put this slide up here. So if you're an entrepreneur, I would challenge you to ask yourself, what would you be so passionate about doing that you'd be happy doing it for 10 years, even if you didn't make a dime? And that's what you should be doing. That's what business you should get into. Or if you have employees, think about what's the larger vision and greater purpose in your employees' work that you yourself truly believe in, so that you can get your employees to believe in as well. What's the greater purpose beyond just money, profits, being number one in the market? Because what the research has shown is that if you can figure this out, then it puts you on the way to becoming a great company. I'm not up here trying to sell another pair of shoes or another article of clothing. I'm just up here sharing what I've learned over the last 10 years and what we've learned at Zappos. And if through this you've been inspired to treat your customers better and really focus on customer service to make customers happier, or you've been inspired to focus more on building your company's core values and culture to make your employees happier, or you've been inspired to just learn more about the science of happiness to make yourself personally happier, If any of those have happened, then I'll have done my part in helping Zappos achieve our higher purpose, which is all about delivering happiness to the world. Thank you very much.